Well, tomorrow.
What? Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome to the Saturday chat. Tomorrow.
Where are we even at? So tomorrow we're going to hit a pretty big staple of modern rock, I would say. Not modern rock, of classic rock, of the transition from rock and roll, blues to rock and roll in early rock and roll history. A song that's been probably high on the list of if you name a rock and roll song of history, you know,
Technically,
a bar band song or
technically, this is a folk song.
Technically,
it's a folk song, and ran straight into a rabbit hole on this one, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun kind of doing research on this. So, House of the Rising Sun, if you don't already know. Yes. That's the song for tomorrow.
Oh, House of the Rising Sun, right.
Yeah.
Tell us about the House of the Rising Sun.
Why don't you tell me what the stories we tell ourselves? What's the story you told yourself about this song, House of the Rising Sun?
Well, the version that I'm most familiar with, and actually never thought twice about, I thought the Animals version, the House of the Rising Sun, was the only version. I thought it was their song.
Really?
For the longest time. You know, as a younger person, when I heard it, I probably wasn't into music history or the knowledge of other versions of songs. I just heard the song. It was very popular on the radio, even though it was, you know, close to 30 years old by the time I was really into music, you know. And I really appreciated Eric Burdon's voice. It actually got me a little bit into the Animals. I liked a couple of their songs.
It's very emotional.
Because of the song.
It's a really emotional
I thought
rendition.
It was emotional and drew me in. And I'd always heard the song was about you can't put it gently. It's
a brothel?
Oh, you did put it gently.
Yeah.
A brothel in New Orleans, and that how it was a ruin of men.
Or a bordello.
Isn't it funny
also.
how, to just sidetrack for a little second, I find it interesting that, I've always found it interesting, maybe I'm just built differently, but I think that it's an interesting concept to think that a brothel would be the ruin of the men instead of the ruin of the women that had to work there.
Well, actually, the song, when it was first introduced into popular culture, well, let me backtrack a little bit. So it is thought, nobody's for sure where the song originates. So it's thought that it originates from Appalachia, or Appalachia, however you want to say it, where they had like church and family songs that were specific to a locale. Sure. And then you'd have people that came around, your sundry salespeople that would travel around, like the DoorDash of the early 1900s, basically. They would come around with pots and pans and things that you couldn't just have at the ready when you lived in a mountain community, right?
Sure.
So they would come through, but it was a whole big thing. It was a big production where they had musicians that would come with them and do performances and whatnot. So these musicians would pick up the songs of these little hamlets along the way, but then they would amend them so that they would tell the story. So the earliest known rendition in writing was from 1925, written from the perspective of a woman. But the earliest known recording is in 1933, written from the perspective of a man. So it goes either way, and artists' interpretation of them through the years have varied.
And it's important to note that though the Animals weren't the author, I believe they're the first ones that married this particular chord progression and timing to this song in a recorded nature.
No. Nope. So it was a friend of Bob Dylan, Dave, and I can't remember his last name. It starts with an R, like Rund, maybe. He's the one that came up with the original chord progression.
So you told me the story, but I thought that he just had the chord progression, not the lyrics. So was he doing this chord progression to this song?
So
I understood that it was like a popular progression that he was doing.
It was to this song. It was to this song. And so what happened was Bob Dylan picked it up. And when Bob Dylan picked it up, everybody started accusing his friend of stealing it from him. And he was like, it was really frustrating, but I just had to quit playing the song because everybody thought I was stealing it off of Bob, even though he was the one that came up with it. Well, funny how things go. When the Animals started playing the song,
they did his version.
Bob Dylan started being accused of stealing their version from them. So it was just sort of a torch that's been passed from Mr. Dave on to Mr. Bob on to Eric and the Animals. Yeah.
So, okay. But, regardless of how they got there, in my mind, the Animals do have the definitive version.
Okay. So let's just loop back around. So when you told yourself the story of the song, you thought it was a brothel. Mm-hmm. So, again, back to different artist interpretations of the song. I found it so fascinating. Artists interpret it differently. And people have been looking for the origin of the House of the Rising Sun, I guess, since the song came out.
Interesting.
So, because it does refer to New Orleans, so that gives us locale. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how did people in Appalachia start singing about House of the Rising Sun in New Orleans? So, I'm wondering if maybe it wasn't there. Maybe it was elsewhere, but that's my own self. So, if it is in New Orleans, for sure, then there has been a public house called House of the Rising Sun. There was a place it was a restaurant and coffee shop, which sometimes housed alcoholic sales as well. A coffee shop would at the time.
Public house would have been a bar, and it would have been very common for a bar to have prostitution.
Well, they're thinking because it referred so much to gambling and drinking that it had nothing to do with prostitution. That it was just a house for gambling and drinking. So it would have been a public house called the House of the Rising Sun, or called the Rising Sun. The early renditions were actually called just Rising Sun, not the House of. So that, but here's the one that I found the most intriguing. There's many, many different versions that artists have told themselves in their renditions. But this one I found the most intriguing, that it was a women's prison.
Interesting.
So there was a women's prison in New Orleans that had an ornate, I forget what it's called when it's over the door, portico. It was a ornate thing.
Sure.
Decorative thing
that
above
like
the door.
A sun?
It was a rising sun.
Interesting.
And so women of the time, they surmised, nobody knows for sure, called it the House of the Rising Sun. So the women in prison. So when
that one actually rings maybe more true than the others, as if you take into consideration, because we know that Eric Burden truncated a lot of verses. Like a lot of verses he changed or didn't use.
Everybody did.
Everybody had, and it's changed a lot since the beginning. But some of the verses referring to getting on the train and going back. It's almost like okay,
to wear the ball and chain.
Yeah, to wear the ball and chain.
Because if you were picked up in the time, you were generally shipped back to the place where you were going to be in prison on a train.
Could have been more like a life story about a woman escaping from prison.
Indeed.
And then being caught and brought back.
Well, I was thinking, so as I heard that rendition, because I had always thought brothel as well, but when I was listening to all the verses, because I had mostly been schooled by the Animals.
Sure. And there's more verses, to be clear.
There's 8
We will
verses.
introduce new verses from the Animals, or different verses than the Animals. Our own take the verses that they had. But
no, we took some out.
I thought we did all the ones that they had.
No, we revised. We
just didn't change. We didn't revise the ones that they did.
No, they did. They did a couple that we didn't do. The one about the only thing a drunkard needs is a suitcase and a trunk. We didn't keep that in because I felt like that was
a different story.
Like if we were going on our storyline, So it was a longer story, not a different story, but a longer story. So I felt like the story, if it were written from the perspective of a woman, which maybe, she got carried off by this rake of a man who was a gambler. She thought it was going to be this great big fancy romance. Well, she gets out there and all he wants to do is drink and to hop around from town to town. So it's not a fancy romance. They don't have a home. They don't have a place to be. And so she does what she must in order to stay with him because he's still her sweetheart. And so that might be some illegal things, whether that be stealing or prostitution. It doesn't go into that, but she's done something that she doesn't want any other girls to do because she's saying, moms, tell your daughters don't do this, whether it's run off with the man or whatever. But whatever it is has landed her in this prison. whether it be a prison of being with a man that doesn't love her like she deserves to be loved, or an actual women's prison that has a rising sun portico on it.
It works for all the storylines. Really.
It's interesting.
Because there's even the, definitely.
It's really interesting.
Very interesting. Thank you for taking us down your rabbit hole.
Yeah, it was a really fun rabbit hole to go down because I just hadn't considered all the different stories it could be.
I'll tell you this much, that doing new verses for this song that I had not been familiar with through the other version that I'd heard kind of reinvigorated me to the song a little bit and also encouraged me to perform it slightly different than the so-called hallmark of virgins.
Yeah, it's really
so it was nice.
It's a good song
to do our own version. I'm happy about it. I hope people will tune in tomorrow and check out kind of an off-the-cuff intro that I just thought up for the song.
I like it.
Slightly different feel than the Animals, although we chose to keep the
as it should be
6/8.
Yeah.
Decided to keep that part, but we added some things. We added some verses, some words, a new intro.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit different. And
hey, we haven't introduced this guy.
We have a guy here. Before we take off, we have...
Come here, buddy. He's very vocal.
This guy.
He's so sweet. This is Tuxedo. He's one of the cats that have shown up on property this year.
He's not happy with
we're not sure, like, all his likes. He likes to talk a lot. We know that. We just got him fixed, so he is now allowed in the house because he's not spraying on things.
Yes.
Yeah, and he is a sweet fellow.
He's a sweet fellow, but we are trying to find homes for lots of our cats. So anybody in Middle Tennessee that needs a cat,
a sweet fellow,
or anybody that wants to Venmo towards the maintenance of cats till we find homes, or the maintenance of chickens and other stray animals that continue to show up here.
Yeah, hi baby.
We appreciate it, and we hope that you all will take the time tomorrow to tune in.
Yeah, what's our question? What's the story that you tell yourself? What is the House of the Rising Sun for you?
Yeah, what's the House of the Rising Sun? What do you think it is? And what comes next? What do you want us to do next?
Yeah, we don't even know.
We're getting overwhelmed. This one was to a good friend of ours, Dylan, and hope he enjoys it.
Yeah. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.